There's something people don't talk about enough when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's failure and dealing with failure. As competitive players in Master Duel, even the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG, me specifically with the TCG because that's what I play the most, we deal with failure a lot. Even the top best players in the game deal with failures, even if it's from time to time. And if you care about the game and if you have a competitive spirit, you can, find yourself really caring about the fact that you've lost or didn't top or didn't win enough. So today, as I unpack my deck box and re-sleeve my cards from my last 3 OTS tournaments from this week, I'm gonna also unpack dealing with failure and how to go into a tournament, how to prepare, but also how to be ready to deal with that failure, because this is essentially what happened to me this week. So we're gonna start off, if you are here for the long run, if you're about to chill with this conversation, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. So this week, I attended, life sometimes gets in the way of you wanting to do certain things. And this week was kind of like fluid in that sense, where I could actually attend I think it was like 3 out of the 5 OTS championships we had this week in my local stores around me. So this is what I did. I attended all 3 of them. And in short, I did not manage to win any of them. I didn't really try necessarily to top. I didn't go all the way in all the tournaments because I have my invite from previous tournaments, and I, after a long day at work, at the office, or working from home, sometimes you're not like at your best, right? I usually do my best when there's a tournament that starts in the morning, on the weekend, and then you can like spend the whole day, like wake up fresh, eat your breakfast, and then go and play for like a certain amount of hours. But sometimes those tournaments are in the evening on local times, right? Locals are usually like at 6 p.m. for me. And, sometimes you're not the sharpest you want to be after like 8 hours at the office and then like 4 or 5 hours in a tournament. Sometimes that happens. I find that usually my success comes with like the longer tournaments that start in the morning. So long story short, I'm going to talk about the tournaments that I had this week briefly. I'm going to spend the time unsleeving and resleeving, and you can see my deck throughout this video, and this is something that I'll also talk about, like how I build this deck for these tournaments. And essentially, like, this is already national season, so we are already preparing for that as well. So Monday, first tournament, no excuses, right? But again, long day of work, head over to the venue, the store after work. It was a really hot day. I was really, really tired. And I've not been testing regularly, not on DB, and a little bit with friends. Not going to locals a bunch recently because of work was a little bit more hectic recently. So not coming in with a ton of prep. I had a coaching session or workshop later that week on Wednesday. So Thursday and Saturday, I was already like coached, quote unquote, and had like a good deck list overall. So Monday was basically me going, I think, 3-2 overall, losing in the final round. I lost to Blue Eyes, which was, in this format, sometimes I don't usually misplay hard. It's usually just what my opponent drew. I don't feel like I play incorrectly. I think I played fairly well with Malice at this point. So it wasn't really up to that. It was more getting worse hands than my opponent or drawing the lesser non-engine, right? That's basically all there was to it. So that was basically Monday, losing to Blue Eyes and then Azamina White Forest in the final round. Didn't come in with a ton of expectations. Again, I'm not fighting for that invite, right? But still sucks to lose. Then it was Thursday, which was the literal worst. Again, another long day at the office, rush back home, And I'm aware that people like work and go to locals all the time. And I've also gone to, work and then locals or an OTS and won. But this week was just not it. So driving over to the locals, about a 30-minute drive. On the way, I kind of like stepped in gasoline in the gas station. My car was smelly. I got there. It was kind of a shit show, like a pretty, like, not to trash the locals, but it's a pretty small and crowded venue. I lost round 2 to Malice, and again I felt like I lost a die roll, drew like pretty poor hands. It was this deck list, by the way, and just lost 2-0. And I didn't even want to continue the tournament because I knew I wasn't going for second place. I was going for the win. Headed home right after that. And then Saturday, it was actually a huge OTS. It was 6 rounds. I ended up going 3-2 before dropping, losing to Malice both times. And again, feeling like I had the better deck, better strategy, better end board, better theory than my opponents. But alas, right? Sometimes you lose the die roll. You get high rolled when my opponent draws much, much better than me. And then basically just losing it, right? Just losing it. So needless to say, after like all this driving around to different towns to attend locals, right? And OTS tournaments and coming up short, right? Pretty much completely with nothing to show for, it was kind of a bummer, to say the least. So a few things about my mindset going into these events. Even though they're OTSs, I don't consider an OTS championship or a regional to be very different than a YCS for me. Like, most people will not attend a YCS in their lifetime. Maybe one, mostly like regionals, things of that nature, right? But, I take it seriously. I prep as much as I can with a busy schedule and like a life to take care of as well. Everybody has that problem, not only me. I know people who work even harder than I do when they get off work and grind for 6 hours on DB. I don't find it to be quality testing. So the prep is a big part of it, right? I think, first of all, the deck choice. I've been playing Branded for a long, long time, for like almost 3 years. Had success with it a lot. Regionals, nationals, you name it. Like every single thing you can check off the list. Not like YCSs and stuff, obviously. But overall, success regionally, locally, which is I think what most players have to deal with anyway. And that's why I tell players, like, prepare for your local scene. So had that comfortable for a while, played a bit of like other decks in between. And then now I've been playing Malice ever since it came out alongside with Branded. And for these tournaments, I was, prepping for nationals. This is like mid-national season. And I wanted to, since I haven't been like really testing on DB or anything, which I'm not going to grind DB. It's not quality testing, but I am testing with friends a lot, or will test even more with friends. So I went with Malice because it's a deck I'm familiar with, and it's a deck that is good and powerful. But the problem with Malice, and this is why I said in my videos a while ago, like, you don't necessarily always want to play the best deck. Because when you play the best deck, and this is what happened this week, was when you play the best deck, people are going to counter you, and you are going to have a target on your back walking into the event. Obviously, you can prepare. You have lines to play around. Different things. But at the end of the day, people aren't ready necessarily for like tier 2 decks or like rogue-ish decks. It doesn't mean that they will win, but on a regional scene, when players are a bit like lower level than a YCS, maybe like a comfort pick that you are very solid with, it can maybe do the job even better. So eventually, like, going into a tournament with this type of deck automatically means you are going to see some cards that FTK you. And with this deck, it's Lancia, right? Mitsurugi has Droll, Mistaken Rest, stuff like that. But this is something you need to take into account. Now, something else that I've learned this week was that even though I was getting coached by a coach on Metafy who had a class about Malice, I felt like their choices were not the right choices and their theories were not necessarily the right theories for the event I attended, just because it's a more regional level event. People play what they have. People don't want to spend money on new decks. People don't hyper optimize their strategy. And they don't play like they quote unquote should play. For example, quote unquote, your opponent should not be playing Nibiru, but they did, right? But they did. And sometimes the most correct call is not the true meta call, and it's not the true strategy. So you need to, now, I think after the tournament on Saturday, I was like, well, I cannot be preparing for this event like I'm going to a YCS where I'm going to see people hyper optimizing their decks. This is not the way to win. And I think it's a good lesson, right? It's a part of dealing with the failure, learning. And if you're not learning when you're failing, then, might as well quit, right? It's hard. It's hard to dust yourself back up and try again. But if you're like me, you love competing. And a part of competing is losing. And you just love that, even though it pisses you off and it hurts. And you can say that you got sacked by a lesser player. But at the end of the day, it is a card game and you are going to lose. But hyper-optimizing your strategy is not necessarily what other people may say about where you're going to compete. It is what you know about the players you are going to encounter. And that's for a regional, nationals level. Maybe not the huge nationals, but, for me and for a lot of you maybe, it's a smaller scene and it's more manageable. So pick the true meta call, not the right meta call, right? Understand and make your own meta call. This is a tool a lot of good players need. So that's mostly like what I've been feeling after these tournaments. And I think that the main important thing and the thing that I'm really, really happy about is the fact that I managed to understand something that I have learned losing all of these events. I'm still, happy with the way I play. I'm happy with my past accomplishments, but it's something that just drives you to do more, right? Once you taste success at any level, doesn't matter if you won a locals and you want to win more or nationals or YCS, it doesn't matter. Winning is winning, and it really, really, not at all costs, sometimes maybe, but overall, if you have a competitive mindset. So that's, I think, mostly what I learned this week. Understanding that your prep is important, but also to cater your prep to yourself and really understand where you are. And I think on a psychological level, failure in athletes and competitors is something that people there's books about it. There's sports psychologists who deal with, the athletes who train for their whole lives for something, and possibly most of them will fail or at least not win the whole thing. There's only one gold medal and there's only one Olympics per 4 years, and it's going to happen. So I think the takeaway from this video could be understanding that preparation is not universal. You need to prepare for your own experience. You need to prepare for your own scene. And you need to understand that the prep is not it doesn't consume everything. You need to put your own take into it. So taking a deck from ygopro.com, net decking, I'm definitely not against it. I do it a lot. Taking a template and understanding what worked about it, getting a starting point that is proven, always great, in my opinion. But if you take it and don't understand how you need to change it, then that's when problems start. Because even if you're a great pilot, going to an OTS championship with 30, 40 people where you know for a fact, because you know you're a part of the community, that maybe 2 players are playing Rising Mitsurugi. Just as an example, then maybe your deck shouldn't have Droll in the main, for example. So make your own deck choices based on what's comfortable. Understand the true meta call. Prep accordingly. And don't be fooled by everything you see or hear online. Make your own takes. Let's see you in the next one. Peace.